As the old saying goes, there are two certainties in life. Number one, death. And number two, taxes. We can't help you with death, but we've got you covered with taxes. This is Ask the Tax Attorney. As you know, the federal government doesn't play when it comes to owning taxes, but too many people freak out about it. So if you're a business owner and you're in trouble, or you're afraid you might be in trouble with the IRS, this is the show for you. Your host is a tax attorney with over 20 years of experience, and she's helped clients erase over $4 million in tax debt. So let's get to it. This is the Ask the Tax Attorney podcast. And now your host, Claudia Moncars.
So welcome to our listeners, and I want to give a special welcome to our guest today, Alberto Naranjo. He's an attorney in South Florida that does employment law, and he represents both the employers and employees, so both sides. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And yes, I always like to tell people that, yes, I'm an attorney, but at the end of the day, I'm really a business owner because so I like to, the first question that I always ask is to give us a summary of your business journey so we can remind our listeners that, yes, we are attorneys. Yes, we can give you legal tips, but at the same time, we're business owners. So we understand where you are right now because we are in your same shoes.
Correct. Yes. And I'll tell you this much. I've been born and raised in Miami, Florida. And throughout my entire life, my family and my parents have owned their own businesses. Mm-hmm. My family has been very successful in one of their businesses where they have a bakery throughout the South Florida region. And what I've learned is that I've always wanted to have a business. I've had businesses since I was in high school, college, and then when I graduated, I wanted to start my own law firm. And I was following in the footsteps of my family because they've always owned the businesses, mm-hmm. and that's what I wanted to do. And when I talk to business clients, I use my knowledge of running my own business plus the knowledge of seeing my family run their businesses to help my clients, saying, hey, these are the mistakes my family did. These are the things that my family did that were good. These are the things that were successful. These are the things that are not successful. So hopefully people can learn from those kind of mistakes. But I've been into business, like I said, my entire life. I remember in high school, I used to go to the bakery, buy pastries, and then go to the beach and sell them to gas stations and all this kind of stuff like that. And then, little by little, once I felt a little bit comfortable with my area of practice, I decided to open up my own company. And, I've been on my own now for about 8 years and very happy about, being on my own.
Congratulations. It's in your DNA. You had to be a business owner.
Yes. It's very hard for me not to be.
/ lawyer.
Correct.
So, no, that's great. It's funny when you said that you took the pastries from your family's business and then sold them. It sounds like my son. He's always trying to figure out how to make money. So I'm hoping that it's in his DNA to be a business owner.
Yeah, some retail arbitrage.
So you've been in practice for a while now. That's a lot of years. So I am sure you have quite some stories that you can share with us about your practice and some of the things you do. And
Definitely. Yeah. So I focus in employment law. And what I typically deal with is either employees that are being fired, employees that are claiming to have been unpaid for wages, medical leave, injuries at work, whistleblower complaints, all that kind of stuff. So I help both the companies and I do help, the employees as well. When it comes to the companies, usually they contact me because they received a demand letter in the mail or because they've heard about me before and they say, hey, I want to avoid these problems in the future. I don't want this to happen to me. I heard this other company got sued, and it, cost them a lot of money. What can we do to kind of avoid this? And it's one of these things where you have to be very cautious. You can't just use your gut reaction when something like this happens. When you're having issues with employees, you can't just have a gut reaction. And another, point about this, or part of the story that we're going to talk about today is that I had a case where a female employee came to me and she told me that she was fired the same day that she told her manager that she was pregnant. Right, which is a big deal. And it's something that it's so simple, an employee that worked there for a very short period of time. And, the company didn't think it was a big deal. It was not going to become an issue. They thought that, she was just lying and making this kind of stuff up. And it turns out that I filed the claim, and the government, which is the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, they're the ones that investigate these claims. But a lot of people think that they're just there to investigate claims, but they're forgetting the second part of the government department, because they do investigations, but they also do enforcement. And basically, it's kind of like the police.
I didn't think about that. That's true. They have the enforcement side.
They do have enforcement side, and what happened in this case is that the EEOC picked up the case and they filed the lawsuit on behalf of my client. And so when the EEOC, when the federal government files a lawsuit against your company, and once the federal government files a lawsuit against you, you can imagine that that's not going to be a fun day, right? Because they have a lot of resources, probably more resources than any of the attorneys that any company could pay for. And it becomes public information. They post it on newspapers, they post it on their blogs, they put it on their YouTube, they put a notice at the company's location to inform other employees about what's going on. They'll require the company to go through training. It's a much bigger issue once the government decides to take on the case. And the takeaway was that the company could have resolved this case much earlier on for less money and with less of a headache, but they wanted to fight the case. And the takeaway for this kind of stuff is that if you're the owner of a company, especially, we're talking about a larger company where the owners are not there every day, where there's multiple locations and there's a franchise and whatnot. I mean, the owners really don't know what happened, right? And so you can't just take that, you can't have your gut instinct and say, hey, this person's lying, you're making this up because they want money or whatever it is, right? You need to investigate it. And what I mean by investigating is asking everybody that's involved.
Your internal investigation?
Say it one more time.
Like you saying, like your internal investigation?
Correct. But the thing is that if you're going to go, if the owner of a company goes to a manager and says, hey, manager, did you do this bad thing that they're suing me for? 99.9% of the time, the manager's going to say no, right? Because they don't want to get in trouble and they don't want to lose their job, right? So you need to ask people that witness the situation, people, not just your managers. You have to ask everybody that's around, and you have to take that with a grain of salt. You have to understand that you're the business owner, you're the boss. The employees are looking at you a little bit different than most people. So what your employees are telling you, what your managers are telling you might not be the truth. Or, at the end of the day, you don't know because you were not there. So if you're going to take a very hard stance in these kind of cases, you need to be very sure of yourself, and you need to have lots of documentation, lots of proof, witnesses, all this kind of stuff like that. I mean, record keeping is very important. I see a lot of companies that get in trouble because, managers and employees are using their personal cell phones to communicate with one another, and, the communication, disappears or whatnot, right? So you have to be very careful on how these things are documented, how they're handled. And you have to have good managers. You have to have good supervisors and train them to recognize, like, if an issue like this pops up, before you react, before you do anything, escalate it up to someone that handles this on a regular basis. If someone comes in and tells you, one of these 5 categories, or, the EOC categories, race, color, age, national origin, religion, medical condition, anything like that, you need to be very careful about that. And like I said, this is a case that they had more than enough time to settle the case, and they wanted to fight the case. And unfortunately for them, the EOC decided to enforce the case against them. They ended up paying a lot more money. They ended up paying for training. They ended up revamping their entire handbook, their policies, everything because of this one case. Something that could have cost them $20,000 ended up costing them hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's and that's something that unfortunately happens sometimes. But you have to understand that the employees are looking out for themselves. They're not looking out for the owners, and you have to have very good trained employees and good documentation.
Yeah, no, I always tell people if the IRS is willing to go to tax court and litigate it all the way, settle. Because that means they have a really good case. They don't like to lose. The government doesn't like to lose. So I always tell them, settle. If they're willing to go all the way, settle. Another thing that that you mentioned that was interesting is that you said that to have good trainings for your managers. I know that you serve as outside counsel for some corporations. Is that something that that you can help your clients, like your off-counsel clients, that as outside counsel, setting up these trainings or giving them guidance of what to do?
Definitely, yes. I mean, what I usually offer most business owners is what I call as a crash course.
Okay.
And basically what I tell most business owners is that if you can get past me, you're getting past 90% of your problems, right? What I'm looking for is the things that can really affect your business, right? And what's scary is that most business owners think, hey, I own a business. If they sue my company, they can't come after me personally.
Oh, no, that's not true.
Which is not true, especially when it comes to the wages, right? And my tip for companies is that the number one most dangerous type of employment case that can be filed against you is unpaid wages, unpaid minimum wage, unpaid overtime, all that kind of stuff. Because when that happens, they can sue not only the company, but they're allowed to legally sue the owners directly. They can even sue the HR person, the manager, whoever was setting the hours, setting the schedule, whoever was paying them, they can be sued personally. And so that's...
Yeah. No, I was saying from a tax perspective, it also, the IRS can go after the owner because if you steal from payroll, you don't do it right when you pay cash.
Yeah. So payroll is something that you want to be extremely careful about. You definitely want to document it. You definitely want to keep records for a minimum of 7 years. You should have clock in, clock out records. You should maintain all that stuff. You should back it up. If you're switching services, make sure you download it, put it into the cloud or whatever it is, and save that information. I mean, it's not going to be a golden ticket out of a lawsuit, but it's going to go a long way to mitigate your damages and make things a lot easier on your half. If you don't save those documents and you don't keep track of the hours that employees are working, the court presumes that whatever the employee said is true. And now it's up to the company to void or to show that the employee is lying or exaggerating. But if you have the documents, then the duty is on the employee to prove that they actually worked more or less hours. So that's the importance of keeping the documents. And that's why, what we call FLSA cases, Fair Labor Standard Act cases, are the most dangerous for companies because the company owner can be sued as well. You can't just go through bankruptcy and, avoid this liability. They can come after you as well. So that's, a big tip that I would recommend to companies, to make sure you're paying everybody correctly. And if you're not 100% sure, err on the side of caution and make sure you're paying everybody overtime and keeping track of that kind of stuff. And I would say is that a lot of business owners should contact an employment attorney, because there's different methods of paying employees depending on what industry you're in. For example, like retail industry, agriculture, that might be more beneficial for you. You don't want to,
Okay.
Yeah. So there, from a business perspective, everybody's looking for, an economical edge, and you want to make sure that you're paying what you can pay legally, but you don't want to cross the line that you're paying less than you should be paying legally. But definitely you need to track that kind of stuff. And another one that I see all the time is, hey, you worked, 50 hours this week. Don't worry about it. Next week you could work 35 hours and we'll just make up, we'll roll over the extra 5 hours the next week. That kind of stuff doesn't work that way. So I would definitely be cautious about the unpaid wages.
Okay. I know in no cash.
No cash. Yes. If you do take cash, I mean, just document it, right? Send them a text message, send them an email, get some kind of confirmation, get a receipt that they sign off, right? I mean, the document is king, right? Yes, I don't it's not good business practice to pay anybody in cash. But if you have to, fine, you can do it. Just make sure you document it the right way. Phones and emails are amazing things nowadays. You can document almost anything that you want to document.
I read I read about a case that they accepted some exchange of taxes, the form for a contract. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Well, one of the biggest cases that came out of the state of Florida was they call them the strip club cases, because they're lawsuits against strip clubs, and these strip clubs are saying, hey, these people never even worked here. What are you talking about? Because they pay them cash, they get money, and they just deny that these people even worked there. They were not even there. What happened? They got their cell phones, they downloaded the GPS data, and they're like, well, we can prove that these employees were sitting at your location for 8-9 hours a day. What were they doing? You're saying that they're not working, but they're here, right? So nowadays with technology, just paying someone cash alone doesn't mean that you're gonna, there's not going to be a record of it. But what I would recommend is always document everything. Right? When you give them the cash, make them sign something saying, hey, yes, I worked from this date to this date, from this time to this time. And, you have to have something documented. You have to have something, either a text message saying, hey, please come by. I have the cash of $500 for you to pick up. Thank you so much for coming by today to pick up this cash, whatever it is, and a lot of business owners just don't think about that because they're doing business. They're worried about growing the business, doing their payroll, keep going. And that's why when I train my customers, is basically what I'm doing is what attorneys are taught to do, is the I in the IRAC, which is spot the issue, right? And I just want my customers to be able to spot an issue and be like, oh, let me think about this, red flag here, Alberto told me something about this. Let me run it by Alberto real quick just to make sure I'm doing it the right way, right? And that's what I do for most customers. I give them a little cheat sheet. It has like the most important things. And then it also has, once you reach 50 employees, once you reach 100 employees, once you reach, because different laws apply to you depending on the size of the company. And so once you reach those levels, or once you're, terminating an employee, or once, an employee says, hey, I'm going to speak to my attorney, or, anything like that, that's when you should run something by the attorney before you have a gut reaction again. And that's, the theme of today is don't have a gut reaction. Is before you react, before you do anything, run it by someone beforehand just to make sure you're doing it the right way and you're not going to do something that's going to hurt your business. At the end of the day, the most important takeaway from this is that most business owners like you and me, we know this, is that it takes a lot to start a business.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's very stressful. It's very hard. Yeah. It takes a lot of money, a lot of time, all that kind of stuff like that. And one silly mistake or one bad, apple can really, take that away from you. And I've seen that happen. I've seen companies close down because they've been sued. You just want to make sure you're doing things the right way. And another thing, in court, there's no legal excuse for, hey, everybody else in my industry does it this way. Right?
I know.
That doesn't work, right? If you own a construction company, everybody has a 1099, fine. I don't care about what everybody else does. I care about what's going to happen to you. And the overlap of employment law and taxes is this whole misclassification of employees, right?
I got that issue a lot.
Employment attorneys file lawsuits on this all the time, and they report it to the IRS, and then the IRS is going to come after them for unpaid taxes and all this kind of stuff like that. And so
they're relentless.
It's very serious.
The IRS has a minimum 10 years to collect from you, and they're like they're a machine. They're slow, but they're machines. So so that's the issue. And
the other thing too is, again, for owners of companies, they're focused on running their company, and unfortunately, especially when it comes to the wages, the law about the wages, unpaid wages, minimum wage, overtime, that's in flux. Depending on, who is the president that year will depend on how these laws are interpreted. And that happens all the time. When Biden came, there was a change to the law. When Trump came, there was a change to the law. When Obama was there was a change to the law. Each party views things differently. The tests change, the factors change. And so that's why I always tell people, err on the side of paying people overtime. And if you're not going to pay someone overtime, make sure you run it by an attorney that tells you, hey, it's okay not to pay this person overtime, or hey, it's okay to pay this person as a 1099, right? You know, but you really need to make sure you're doing that correctly, because like I said, that's the number one issue in employment law. It's the most dangerous case. And I mean, if you're terminating someone, you know, make sure that you can run it by someone as well. I mean, when it comes to termination, I guess the key is just treat everybody the same.
Okay.
If you're treating people differently, there's usually a problem there. You know, if you fire someone for one thing, you have to fire everybody else for doing the same thing. If you're not going to fire someone because of X, then you can't fire anybody else because of X. The moment that you start treating people differently, there's a problem there. Can it be a legal problem? Yes, so there's discrimination. But I guess the last takeaway is that, you know, the way you make your employees feel is very important as well. Because I've seen many times where people come to me and say, hey, I want to know if the company was paying me correctly or not. And I'll tell them, hey, they were not paying you correctly, and you have an amazing case. I'm dying to take this case for you. But the employee says, they're very nice to me. They've taken care of me for many years. I don't want to bother them. I just want to know for myself. Right?
Okay. Oh,
versus, you know, employees that leave very angry and upset. They're going to look for whatever reason they can to file a lawsuit against you, right?
Yeah.
You know, they're going to come in and they're going to spill the beans. They're going to, you know, pull out all the bones, all the skeletons, and then tell you all the things that they've seen. And they're going to just try to, you know, come up with whatever they can. So pay the people correctly, treat everybody good, make everybody happy, treat everybody the same. And, you know, the more the people feel happy, the better it is.
And I think that also helps you just overall as a business owner. Like, if your staff and the people that your employees are happy, they're going to give you 100 to 100%. And sometimes, and I think your happy employees are your best sales people too, because
more productivity.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Definitely.
I think they can make or break you. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. And thank you for all your valuable tips to our audience. And Alberto, if somebody wants to talk to you, hire your services, or learn more about them, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, the best way to get a hold of us, you can go through our website. It's called employmentlaw411.com. So employmentlaw411.com, or they can give us a call, 305-942-8070.
Perfect. Well, once more, thank you so much for your all your advice. I mean, I always love these interviews and this, because I always myself are learning. So I put on my business owner hat. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to it. And if you found this information valuable, please share it with your friends. Thank you. Until next time.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Ask the Tax Attorney podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. And if they're in tax trouble, they will too. Once again, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.